Welcome to the Community of Practice for Teaching and Learning podcast series. I'm Dr. Victoria Chen, and join me as we dive into stories from our teaching and learning community. So welcome to episode 5 of the podcast. Today we have Dr. Nikki Martyn, the program head of early childhood studies, in the studio with us. Welcome.
Hello. Hi.
So in preparing for this podcast, I thought back to when I first applied to Guelph-Humber and preparing for the interview. So I asked some alumni what was the most memorable part of their experience at Guelph-Humber, and all of them said Nikki Martyn. And so I thought that because I hadn't been here before, I just thought you were teaching all of the ECS courses for some reason. And there was no one else in this building. Oh. But they all spoke so highly of you and the lasting impact that you made on them. And thinking back to my own experience, I don't remember ever speaking to a dean. So I was so glad that we had this opportunity to work together for the Community of Practice for Teaching and Learning, and really inviting you for this theme of emotional intelligence today and how you've modeled those principles. So just to start off, I ask all our guests, how did you end up here at Guelph-Humber?
Oh, Victoria, my heart is just, I was not expecting that. Thank you so much. And thank you for sharing that with me, because it's, sometimes you forget that you matter. And so thank you so much for reminding me that I had no idea that students said I am the experience that they enjoyed most. That touches my heart in such a profound way. So thank you for giving me that gift today.
You're welcome.
I feel very taken. So thank you for that. That means a lot to me. I appreciate it. Okay, so where's my question was, how did I get here?
Yes.
Okay, well, I actually, how did I get here? I think Guelph-Humber is one of those really interesting places where that's an interesting question. I think people's journeys of how they get to Guelph-Humber and how you find your way, like how you find your path, is fascinating, which probably not what we're here to talk about today, but how I found my path here. I previously taught at York and TMU, which used to be Ryerson, and I loved it. I started an early learning and care center. And so back when my son was first born, so a long time ago now, 18 years ago now, I started an early learning and care therapeutic school. So it was this therapeutic center, and it was really cool, but so much work. I had no idea what it was going to take. So we got that up and going, and some events happened, and we ended up creating the kids weren't ready to go off onto anything else yet. And so we ended up creating a private elementary school. And so, and so that was really great. So it was like this therapeutic early learning environment that turned into a therapeutic elementary school, and it continued till grade 8. And it was really there that I think I learned most about inclusion and the importance of every child or every person feeling seen and valued. And really, I love to use the example when I think about this is like, we used to do circle times, and we had some children who were on the spectrum, and sometimes they needed to hold a toy or a stimulant, like something to ground them or to play with so that keep their focus. And it was a really interesting conversation. I remember I was doing a circle once. I didn't often, but I loved being with the kids and I loved doing circles. So I did one day. And one of the kids said to me, "Why does he get to hold a ball? I want to hold a ball." And we had this really interesting conversation about how we all have different needs and we all need something different, and that because he needs the ball for this, that she would need something at a different time. And inclusion meant that we were there to support each other based on our needs, right? And all of our needs are different. And so it really where I formally learned in a very aha moment way of us all as humans, we're all exactly the same and all remarkably different, right? So there's a humanness that is important, and also the diversity and how we all have different needs. And I think that's where we kind of get into equity and equality, which I find so fascinating. So that is, I think, impacts me a lot today. But then I just for fun on the side, I taught at York and then at Ryerson and that's where I found my love of teaching. So I think I loved the kids, and then I loved being with people who love children and thinking of ideas. And as you know, I love big ideas, and I love thinking about things really big. And it was a great opportunity there in teaching post-secondary to be able to play in a different way than playing with the younger children. And then I came here to teach one course. I came actually as an instructor to teach a field course, a fourth-year field course, and it just felt right, and it was great, and assistant program head position opened up, and I went for it, and I got it, and that's what brought me here. And a lot of the time I think about Guelph-Humber as, in a lot of ways, it gave me purpose and saved me a lot. And so it was really, I have like a lot of warm and fuzzies to Guelph-Humber for sure.
Wow, amazing. So I guess ECS was already a program.
No.
At the time.
Well, yes and no. So this is interesting. When I first became an assistant program head here, it was ECS and CSS, which were together as human services, right? And so it was a Department of Human Services, and both of them were kind of like very small programs underneath it. And then over the course of the time that I was here, the vice provost at the time decided to separate them. And that was really wonderful for me because I love being strategic and creating a vision and imagining something. And so a lot of the work that I do here is really about thinking about those kids. So I hold those kids that, have grown up now, but all of those kids in the world that are in early learning environments or who are in therapeutic environments. And, and I try to think about how can we train our professionals or prepare our professionals to impact the children. So for me, kids, even though we don't actually have any children on site, kids are the center. I hold them at the center of everything we do. And we've created a community of people who just love kids and really want the best for them. And for me, it really is about how can we impact the future? Because I know everybody says, children are the future, but children are the future in a way that's very meaningful. The experiences, every experience that affects children, every single thing that they experience impacts how they see the world, how they anticipate everything in the future. Who you are today is impacted by who you were when you were a child. That means that if we want to be future focused and think about the future of humanity and like really create a world that we would love to be in, which for me is full of love, then we need to make sure that all of the children feel loved and seen. So my vision is to create a world where children are seen and heard and valued and loved in an authentic way that is unique for each individual child, just like my individual child that was holding the ball and the other child who's like, but I want to do that too, and having different needs. So that's my vision, is that each child is seen and heard and valued and loved in a really meaningful, authentic way, and are able to be who they are. And what I mean by that is like authentically, that we don't need to become something that we're not, to turn into. Do you know what I mean by that? Like when your parent says, oh, no, you can't do that. And then you learn, okay, this is not okay. It's like some things are not okay. Don't get me wrong. We need boundaries and structure and, self-regulation and all those things. But we also need to find a way that we can have our brains work the way that our brains work. And so we can have divergent thinking and solve big problems, but also recognize that it's okay for us to have different opinions. It's okay for people to think differently than us and question things and not hurt people. That's not what I'm saying, but that we're able to think about things differently and that it's a safe space for all of us to be who we are, because that's the way we'll change the world. So I have this vision that will create, and so I hold this when I'm in this university program of how can we how could we create a world where where children feel safe and loved and cared for and have all of those healthy experiences with technology, with relationships, with everything, so that we actually can future-proof for our next generation of humanity. Which is why I'm so fascinated right now in technology, because we're not future-proofing for that. We're just allowing kids to kind of be on it all the time, and we kind of know it's not okay, but we don't know how to do it, and we don't know how to figure it out, and we don't know how, and the big tech companies aren't really invested in creating healthy technology for children. And so that means that we're responsible. The society is responsible for how do we do that? How do we ensure that children have critical thinking skills so they can make decisions like early on, so that they can make decisions around terms of service or privacy or think about those things that right now, or at least in my generation, we never would have thought about at that age. So we're having to push some of the skills back younger. And it's interesting to play with and think about because it's all just in the future, right? But it really matters because it really is about who we become as humanity. And so for me, this is the best part of what we do with the students here, because we get to think about the impact, because their brains are still moving too. All of us are, like neuroplasticity happens our whole life. And so all of those experiences that the students have professionally with us or in the classroom or asking the questions or feeling supported and heard and valued models who they become when they're adults or when they're professionals, right? And how they then impact children. And so to me, that is really important. And I think that's true for all professions, but I only am in my own profession. But how do we model the behavior of what we want to see in the world? And I think we do that through our lived experiences. So it's really important to me. And that's partly why it touched my heart so much when you said, like, I am the experience that mattered, because that is the core for me of like making a difference in the world. That's the hope. That's the dream. So thank you for giving me an inkling that the dream maybe happened a little bit.
Yes, absolutely.
It's been achieved in small bits.
Yes.
There's more to come.
And I think with that, because you talk a lot about children, but also our students as adults, and you mentioned like as them, how do we model them so they become professionals and the future? And so what advice would you give to instructors who are working with our students? And they might be thinking, well, I'm not teaching ECS, I'm not teaching children, but what can I do to model like emotional intelligence to these undergrads?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting. I think that the main thing, I think it doesn't matter what you do, because we all are in environments and we're all using ourselves. And so emotional intelligence in teaching is paramount, right? That we're able to teach self-awareness and self-regulation, like that we're able to empathize. And a lot of this we learn through modeling and transparency and vulnerability. I think that we learn a lot about being human. I think students, when they're younger, 17, 18, 19, 20 years old, they look at somebody from the outside and think, oh, they got it all together. Like, I could never be that. And the reality is every human being is kind of messy inside, right? And I think that there's something really important about being able to see who people really are at some way. And I think sharing vulnerability is important in that. And I believe it's important that students learn to take risks, right? Taking risks and failing sometime is really important in play. It's important to as a learning process, because we're not always going to win everything. It'd be nice if we did, but we don't. And so we need to be able to develop resilience and know that we can bounce back and come back harder, and we can think about what can we learn and come back from a different perspective. The only way to actually be comfortable and learn to fail is that we learn to be vulnerable and we learn to take risks. Because as adults, well, at any age actually, play, which is what we're talking about, right? You play with something, you fail, right? Education is actually just play. We're playing with ideas. We're playing with concepts. We're wondering about things. We're expanding our ideas, right? It's kind of like building a world with blocks. And to do that, you need to be able to feel like your environment is safe. So my biggest, I think that what is most important to me over the years that I've learned in teaching is not actually about the teaching and not actually about the learning. It is about the environment that we create. So creating a safe space, or at least as safe a space as possible, so that the students can feel like they matter, their voice matters, their experience matters, and that they can share themselves. And I think then it actually becomes a fun, playful experience where if I share who I am and they share who they are, and we've agreed to what the environment's going to be like, and I am honest and authentic and I follow through with what I say, which is a big part of trust, because it's all about building trust, then they can slowly over the course of the 12 weeks, really like, oh, this is a safe place where I can explore and where I can discover. And I think that's, to me, where the most amazing learning happens. They make connections that maybe I hadn't made, or they take a risk and ask something. It's like, yes, right? Like those are the most brilliant moments. But I think for me, it really is about creating those boundaries and structure at the first couple weeks of class, of saying, here's the agreement that we make. And I'm very specific of saying things like, what happens in our class stays in our class. Like, we're not going to talk about people behind our backs, right? So that there isn't that fear, because a lot of, especially in my program where it's predominantly young women, there's a little bit of a cattiness that can happen before they get to university. And so we want to make sure that we have boundaries set up. And then I try my best to show up authentically in every relationship, right? Then the students learn, hopefully, and this is it's the hope, is students learn in those moments what it feels like to be heard. And so but I think also the interesting part is sometimes people can think, well, when you do that, the risk is that everybody will always want everything. And it's so fascinating, much like that conversation about the ball and circle with the children. Nobody actually expects to always get what they want. They just like to be able to understand why they can't, right? So it's an interesting, when you open yourself up and you can have open, honest conversations and be genuine, you actually allow for the students to be able to say what they want to say, to be able to share themselves, and to ask the questions, to be curious, to say when they think something's not fair, all of that stuff that is kind of uncomfortable. When that can come out, you can also say, oh, yeah, I totally get that, and still we can't do it. Or here's why I'm saying no. And it's easier to hear when you know you've been heard, and it's easier to decide how you're going to move forward. And I think that piece around honesty is really important, that you can show up and be honest, because it also builds trust. And when you feel like you can trust somebody, you feel like you can ask questions, and there's no wrong answer because the people will show up with you. So I think for me, that's the key, is creating environment and building the meaningful relationships. For me, as you know, it's about love. So I like to create, and I know that this is contrary to most people, but I really try to build loving relationships with everybody, where I try to, be present and build trust and allow people to be vulnerable. And sometimes that means being vulnerable myself and opening up my heart as much as I can in that moment, to feel and listen through my heart. It's a really interesting thing I learned a number of years ago I had this fascinating conversation with a colleague, and we were talking about the mind-brain connection. And I went down, as academics often do, I went down this rabbit hole pretty deeply. But he had said something about not understanding with his mind, understanding with his heart. And I was like, wow.
You have a poster on
your wall. Yeah, exactly. I thought, wow, that's a really interesting thing. And I thought, how would that, and my brain went, how would that even happen? How do you not process something with and this was the start of my journey, of this most recent journey and of self-exploration, because it really got me thinking, if I don't use my brain to process it, how can I open my heart and experience something through my heart? And so that's been a bit of my journey. I know, not totally academic and weird for this environment, but it is what we're talking about. In terms of emotional intelligence, it's about showing up and being present and allowing people to be present too. And that allows people, you have self-regulation. So, you have resilience, where you can learn, how do I be resilient? But in these moments, emotional intelligence is all about relationships. It's all about connection. And so for me, as I learned to fall into my heart, is what I called it initially, is try to listen with my heart. As I was learning it, I would just hold my hand on my heart to remind my body of how I was listening, so I wasn't being too analytical. And it changed the interactions with people. It allowed me to be present, and it allowed me to feel what they were feeling, and to acknowledge that part of relationships that often, especially in environments where they're so focused on intelligence, it allowed me to be present. And I think that also, what that ended up doing is it created an opportunity for students to feel, because we're all human. So I think sometimes in academic environments, we can go, oh, I need to be it needs to be an intellectual thing, and it needs to be, I'm going to make, right? It's going to all be in the brain. But we forget that we're actually human, And humans are messy and emotional and all over the place. And it's really hard sometimes that our emotion gets the best of us and we don't always act the right way. Or sometimes we cry in our office and being able to allow for all of that and not just allow for it, but to support it and create a safe space where it's okay to be. It's not only okay, but it's revered to be who you are. And you could be and express that. And I think that bringing it back to science for a minute, in attachment theory, which is about relationships in infancy and in early childhood, but, extends throughout the life, right? So it changes throughout the life, but it extends throughout the life. And when we look at this, when we look at little children and we think about attachment theory, we think about the importance of those connections and relationships that really last our lifetime. And we know social epigenetically, they actually live under our skin. So all of those early relationships go and change our DNA. Like, it's fascinating. Change our brain structures, create who we are. And so when we think of attachment theory, when we think of like little kids, we think of like the importance of those connections. But here's something like what I've put a lot of stake in my life is that we know for little kids, so I'm theoretically believing this happens their whole lives, but we know for little children that if they have a secure, loving relationship, so a secure attachment relationship was one that feels safe and cozy, it's loving, they can be who they are, there's boundaries, like all of this, like it just is, it's balanced, like they feel safe in essence, safe and secure, okay? And so when a child has one of those experiences in their life, it can be a teacher, it can be a grandparent, doesn't matter who it is, but one experience in their life, they then know it's possible. And I think that's fascinating for me. And I take this into my life, right? Into my life here when I work with students, is if I can be that one experience, right? A student has had a difficult, early childhood and difficult relationships with their parents, maybe have experienced a significant amount of trauma, of which I have as well. So I understand that. So I don't want it to make it sound like it's something out there. It's in here. It's certainly in my own life. And I've had to work through that. And I recognize how difficult it is. And so I think if I can be safe and secure, then maybe that one student has an experience with me, knows it feels good. It feels different. It's weird. It's uncomfortable. And it's safety, because when you've had difficult experiences, when you've experienced adversity, you're expecting everybody to combat at you combatively, right? You think, oh, the world is going to attack me and I need to protect myself at all times. And when you can be the person that just kind of sits with that and allows that to crumble a little bit and be safe and be respectful and allow their voice to be heard and for them to feel safe in that, it is a powerful and profound experience. And for me, that is important because once you experience it, you can never not experience it. But if you've never experienced it, you don't know it exists. And think about that for a second. I mean, I love this space. It's so fascinating. To know something, to not know that it ever exists, means that you're going through life really not understanding unconditional love, really not understanding what it feels to be authentically seen for who we are. And I think most of us walk around in life not feeling that. And so when working with children, but I think that actually it is for humans. So I would say all post-secondary. I know it's not just people who deal with children in this who are listening today, but I think anybody that deals with humans. This is the ripple effect of love, is when we can share love and we can share connection and when we can be present in a meaningful way with somebody and they feel that love and they feel seen and heard and valued, which is actually what I would say is kind of what love feels like. You feel seen for who you are. You feel heard. You feel like you have space. You are given some space to take up and you feel safe in it. I think that when we can give that, all of our students can then know it exists in the world and they can find it in themselves and they can look for it in the world and then they can give it out. And I think that's the ripple effect of love that we have the opportunity in post-secondary of doing, is being present with people, allowing them to express and be who they are, being authentic and vulnerable. And then it's amazing what can happen. They then, in my field, they'll go and they'll be with kids and they create those opportunities for future. But in business or, any other field where maybe that's not as valued, I would like to hope that we have a world where we start to look at, trust and authenticity and creating safe spaces of belonging in all industries, even our industries that maybe struggle with some of the honesty and transparency. And I think our world will be better when we just have people in all industries that can be real with each other, and we can create a really beautiful world.
I think that's a great way to conclude our podcast today. It was really a full circle moment.
It was. Thank you so much for allowing me to play, because I don't have space to play very often anymore. And it was really fun to think through something. So I hope it made sense and it was valuable, but it was really valuable to me. So thank you for inviting me and allowing me some space to play and share with you. It was fun.
I'm so glad that you were able to share this with everyone who's listening, whether it's our students, faculty, or staff. And I think we can all learn so much from you and how you've given students a voice, a vision, and feeling like they've been heard, and how we could all do that too.
Oh, thanks, Victoria. It's beautiful.
Thank you. And that's the end of our podcast today.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to fill out our survey to share your thoughts on our podcast. Until next time.